The mountains stood silent. The seas held their breath. The stars burned in the vast, empty sky, waiting for the final piece of the design. God reached down to the soft, warm earth, gathering a handful of fine, dark dust. He worked the soil between his palms, shaping it with deliberate, steady movements. There was no sound but the wind moving through the grass. He laid the form upon the ground and leaned close. He drew a deep breath and released it directly into the chest of the clay. The dust shifted. It hardened into bone, softened into muscle, and flushed with the heat of blood. The chest rose once, then twice, in a ragged, sudden rhythm. Adam's eyes snapped open. He pushed his palms against the dirt, felt the grit beneath his skin, and rose to his feet. He looked at his own hands, then turned his gaze toward the horizon. He stood perfectly still, a singular figure reflecting the presence of his creator, breathing in the scent of the garden for the very first time. Adam walked the garden paths. He named the birds that circled the canopy and watched the lions lounge in the shade, yet the silence of his own heart remained. He was surrounded by life, but he walked alone. God observed this quiet ache and spoke into the stillness. "It is not good for man to be alone." A deep, heavy calm descended upon the garden. Adam sank to the mossy ground, his eyes closing as a profound sleep took hold. When the light shifted, God stood before the sleeping man. With a singular, precise motion, he drew a rib from Adam's side, shaping it, refining it, and breathing life into the form until it stood complete. Adam stirred. He opened his eyes to find a new presence beside him. He reached out, his hand meeting hers, and a surge of recognition sparked between them. He named her Eve. They walked hand in hand through the meadows, the rivers flowing like liquid diamonds beside them. As the sun dipped low, they sat in the grass, speaking with God. The garden continued its golden cycle, yet the air grew thin near the center of the grove. Two trees stood apart from the rest, their leaves shimmering with a different, heavier light. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge remained untouched, guarded by the simple, loving rule. Then, the silence broke. A dry, rasping sound echoed against the wood, the friction of scales sliding over bark. A snake coiled itself around a low branch, its eyes fixed on the path where Eve walked alone. It did not strike. It waited. As Eve drew near, the creature shifted, its head swaying in a hypnotic, rhythmic arc. It spoke, the voice smooth and cold. "You will not die," the snake hissed. "If you eat this, the world opens. You will be just like God." Eve stopped. She looked at the fruit, then back at the serpent. The branches above seemed to darken. The choice hung in the air. Eve closed her hand around the fruit. The skin felt cool, vibrating with a strange, static energy. She bit into it, the juice sharp and unfamiliar on her tongue. She turned, finding Adam nearby, and pressed the fruit into his palm. He hesitated, then took a bite. In that heartbeat, the world fractured. The golden light that had bathed the garden for ages vanished, replaced by a gray, biting chill that seeped into their skin. The wind picked up, rattling the leaves with a harsh, metallic sound. Adam dropped the remains of the fruit. It hit the dirt with a dull thud. They looked at each other, and for the first time, the openness in their eyes was gone, replaced by a jagged, raw awareness. A heavy, suffocating pressure settled in their chests. They felt exposed, vulnerable to the very air they breathed. They scrambled away from the clearing, pushing through the thick, tangled bushes until they reached the deepest shadows. They huddled together, limbs trembling, pressing their backs against the rough bark of a cedar. They pulled branches over themselves, desperate to hide from the light, from the trees, and from the silence that now felt like an accusing weight. The paradise they knew had dissolved, leaving only the cold sting of the wind. God found them huddled in the dark. The silence between them was heavy, but his voice remained steady. Because they had chosen to walk away from the light, the garden could no longer be their home. They stood, trembling, as the reality of the wide, untamed world outside the gates set in. Yet, before they stepped past the threshold, God acted. One day, a savior would rise from their own family to mend what was broken. Adam took Eve's hand. They crossed the boundary, They carried the promise in their hearts, a tiny, flickering spark of hope that would one day grow into a light that never fades.